Hi there, Ramon from Memories, and welcome to this episode of Memories Caregiver Spotlight. Today we have Mitzi, who's been a caregiver for her father, and I'll throw it over to her to introduce herself.
Hi guys, so my name is Mitzi, like you said, and I care for my father who has ALS, so that's amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. He's been sick for about 7.5 years now. I'm one of 4 girls, but I've somehow taken on the role of primary caregiver with the help of my 3 sisters. And my dad, I would say he's still quite mobile in the sense, he can get up from his bed and go to his chair and vice versa. But we do check on him every day. We go every evening to make sure he's got dinner. Personally, I'm dealing with doctors and nurses and occupational therapists and any phone call possible, or running over at 10 p.m. to fix his Netflix password. You name it, it happens. So, yeah.
So you said he was diagnosed about 7.5 years ago, I guess.
Not even. He's been sick 7.5 years. He was diagnosed 3.5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it took a very long time.
So I guess what in that, that was a long period of time of almost uncertainty so what was that like emotionally for you?
Hell. It was horrible. At the beginning, we still kind of said, oh, maybe he'll get better. There was, they threw around words like degenerative, but we still had this hope that he would still be okay. In the beginning, like when he went into the hospital, we fully thought, we're like, oh my God, this is it. He's going to die. Then, as time went on, we're like, okay, so maybe it's just temporary. Maybe this is it. He's stable. He's going to be like this forever. It started off with loss of balance, a lot of headaches. He had numbness, so they thought maybe it was a stroke. In the end, they misdiagnosed him and said he had something called vasculitis in his brain. I believe it's inflammation of blood vessels, which he eventually had a brain biopsy. So they drilled a hole in his head and, he has a metal plate there now. The surgeon did the procedure, came out and said he does not have vasculitis. There is no medical proof to say that he has vasculitis. We do see some inflammation. We do see some discoloration, shrinking, but we don't see anything to support what the doctor had suggested. The doctor then didn't care, I guess, and treated him for vasculitis. So he, for a year, every 2 months, I think, or every 3 months, he would go for chemotherapy as an alternative therapy for this disease that he didn't have. Thankfully, the type of chemo that it was, he didn't lose his hair or anything like that. He just felt sick and tired and drained. And it would take a whole day. So, I had to take off work, or my sisters had to take off work. And eventually we got in touch with an ALS specialist who had been referred to us by the neurosurgeon. And within 2 appointments, she had said, yes, you have ALS. Yeah. And to hear that, it was like, oh, good, now we know what it is. But at the same time, oh, crap. There goes our slim chance of him getting better, because we know there's no cure, it's terminal.
So I guess my next question is, how has your life kind of changed or shifted since that diagnosis and that moment when you found out that it was ALS?
I would say it wasn't a huge shift from while he was sick with no diagnosis to diagnosis, but if I had to pick something, knowing that there was no chance anymore of him getting better, it kind of changed my perspective of him and his care. So yes, I still get frustrated when I'm like, oh, I have to go to his house today. But at the back of my mind, it's like, okay, yes, it sucks, but I get to go and I get to see him, and we're lucky that he's still here.
Sure, for sure. I know you mentioned that you have a few sisters. How has this kind of experience impacted your family dynamic? What are strategies you guys use to kind of work together to be caregivers together in that sense?
Well, my sister's here, so I got to be careful what I say. She's laughing in the corner. No, in the beginning, I'm not going to lie, it was very tough. You know, I used to suggest, let's make a schedule. No, I don't want to. No, I don't want to. I'd say the balance of the care was not equal. And slowly over the years, we've kind of found a rhythm together. So now we make a schedule every end of the month for the following month. So 30 days all in one shot. So that actually made our lives easier. So caregiving hack, make a schedule. We can then plan our own lives. So, okay, yes, we do know, obviously we have our jobs, and then we also have our dad, but by planning in advance like that, we're able to just plan ahead, like, oh, I'm going to see this friend on this day, or if, you know, I want to make an appointment for something, I know that I'm free on another day, or it really helps to kind of lay everything out. I also find we have definitely gotten closer. So, you know, we've got a group message going on Facebook Messenger, and it's constant. So sometimes it's focused on my dad. I think that's how it started. But now we talk about everything. We're always connected.
I think that's amazing. And I think that's something that we've heard a lot from a lot of times when you have a lot of siblings or maybe cousins or just closely related family members that are all kind of taking caregiving for one individual. It often draws you closer. And I think it's a really beautiful thing to draw from what's been a very difficult experience for you. And I know you mentioned in the early days that it was really challenging, especially on the communication aspect between the sisters. So what advice would you have to any siblings or kind of caregiving teams that are kind of struggling to communicate and stay on the same page, other than what you've already mentioned?
A big part for so I obviously took control and became kind of in charge, so to speak. But I eventually, I learned, and actually therapy helped me with this, what they do is not my problem. So I can say to myself, I did what I could. I know I won't have regrets, and I'm doing my best. But it's not up to me to look at what they're doing or not doing and to judge. So it took me a little while, but I had to learn, okay, if they don't want to do this, or if they're doing less, then that's on them. It's not on me. So that was a big help. But as for difficulty, it was mostly, I think the biggest part was trying to make a schedule, because it was shot down every time for the first few years.
Sure.
So big tip is, yes, try to open communication, be honest, but also open to what the others are saying. And if you can help yourself come to that realization of you're only responsible for your actions and not for everybody else, I think that does help with mental health big time.
Sure, and I think that's such a beautiful piece of advice, especially for any kind of caregiving teams that are walking out. Like, yes, you're that are watching right now. Like, yes, you're working together to do this, but at the end of the day, like you can only control yourself and your actions and your responses. And I think what's really challenging, especially when you're all super motivated and you really care about the person you want to have the best. But you know, you can only be the best version of yourself and the best caregiver if you're mentally okay, and you can't be if you're kind of taking on the stress of monitoring everyone else on top of caring after your loved one. I think it's a beautiful piece of advice. And I think I love this idea of growth and how you and your family have grown as a result of this experience. So I guess, what are some ways that, if we could expand on this a little, what are some ways that you've grown or changed or developed as a result of being a caregiver for your father for so long now?
In a work aspect, I would say that seeing what he has to deal with, being, having ALS and knowing that he's going to die, and all of us watching him get worse, a deadline at work, no one's dying. Like that is my go-to when someone comes to me and says, I'm so stressed. I have a deadline. I don't know if I'm going to meet it. And I always say, is anyone dying? No. Well, then what are you worried about? Work is just work. Your health is always more important. So I'd say it's definitely helped me to reassess my priorities in that sense. So yes, there are stressful things that happen in my job, but it doesn't make me stressed because I'm able to see, okay, is this truly important? No, it's not. That's I think one big thing that's changed for me. Family wise, like I said, it brought us closer, more open with each other, constantly communicating. And I think friendship wise, and I'm sure I've heard this from a lot of people that I've connected with online, is that you find out who your true friends are. So once you start caring for your loved one, and your priorities shift, you see who is truly there for you as a friend. And sometimes people that you were not even close with are the ones that kind of come out of the woodwork and show you that they're the ones who are there for you. So it makes you realize, like I said, who your friends are and who aren't your friends, and who you could count on. And I think the most important part is it teaches you what you're capable of. So if you had asked me 10 years ago, if I would ever see myself doing the things I'm doing now, there's no way. Not at all.
Oh, such beautiful points, all three. Wow, I love this idea of showing you who your true friends are, what the important connections in your life are, especially in today's age of social media. I feel like everyone has like 1,000 friends, but when you enter a difficult situation like this, it just really shows you who's in your corner, who's there for you. I love this idea of like reprioritization, especially in our this, I guess it's like workaholic culture. Everything feels like life or death, but it's not. And I think reminding yourself of what's really important when stressful situations come about can really help ground you and center you and allow you to see things with that sort of like holistic perspective, end of the road perspective. And I love that you've been able to kind of look inwards introspectively and see this kind of development yourself. I think those are three beautiful points that are applicable to anyone, caregiving for anyone in life, really. It just
not just caregiving, it's just grow.
It's growth. So, and again, I love this idea of realizing that you're capable of a lot more than you initially gave yourself credit for. Like, beautiful, beautiful points. And I would love to chat a little bit about social media, because that is how we came in contact with you and the kind of role that's played in your caregiving journey so far.
Through my caregiver account, because I've been on Instagram for God knows how long. We're all, Facebook joined in 2006, Instagram, whenever it opened, got that shortly after. So I've used it personally for a very long time. I would post my food or workouts because I'm very into fitness. I got my certification, but I'm not training anyone anymore. Between work and caregiving, there's just no more time or energy. So that's what I use my personal account for. But I started thinking to myself, I kind of want to post more about what I'm doing as a caregiver, how I'm feeling, things that I've learned, how can I help other people? And I think it was in May, it was a year since I started this caregiving account. Caregivers need some care too. And the goal with that was to share, but also to connect with other people. So within the first few months, I think I had connected with at least 20 other caregivers within around my age. I'll be 33 next month. So 32, I can still say it. 32, so around my age, millennials, caring for their loved ones. And I actually connected with quite a few who were caring for someone with ALS. And then quite a few who were around my age caring for a parent. And it made a huge difference. So for me, it was a way to feel like, okay, how I'm feeling is normal. What I'm going through is normal. There is no normal with this. And at the same time, I felt really good that I was able to help these people. I was getting so many messages of, oh my God, I just came across your account and it really speaks to me and I appreciate what you're doing. And I love what you post, and it's kept me going. So now over a year, so like a year and a few months later, I don't post that often, but I try to post things that matter. And I truly wish I had started this at the beginning, 7.5 years ago. And I wish I had connected with all these people back then, because in the beginning, I didn't know anybody in my situation. And it was very isolating, like you said before. I think that that's one of the biggest issues with being a caregiver at such a young age. It's not very known. It's not, I mean, it's more common than people think, but it's not so much in the public. So you think that you're alone and that nobody understands you. Nobody knows what you're going through, how you feel. Personally, I mean, I had my sisters, so I was lucky with that. So, already 3 people that understand me. But eventually connecting with people online, I don't believe in God, but it was a godsend, I don't know what other word to use for that. Yeah.
No, I think that's such a beautiful thing. One, that kind of like cathartic experience of just like documenting these moments. And then 2, I think, and even the bigger one is just the idea of feeling connected, especially as we said, like millennial caregivers, younger caregivers. When you're in your early 30s, people are starting families, getting married, you're seeing all these different experiences, and it's really difficult to see someone who's going through what you were going through in that moment. And I think social media is a beautiful way in order to kind of facilitate those relationships, because any caregivers you're watching, and no one in your street or in your neighborhood or even in your whole city may be going through what you are going through, but there are people out there in the world who want to talk to you, who want to get to know you, and social media is a great way to find them. So thank you so much for bringing up that point. And I love this idea also of using your difficult experiences and the challenges you've gone through to help others. I think that's such a beautiful thing, and I think it's really admirable that you've been taking something that's been a very challenging thing for you and use it in a way to uplift and bring up other people. And that's something we also want to do here. And I think my last question to you would be, what's the number one, so let's say you had a conversation with yourself about 7-8 years ago before all this started. What would be the number one piece of advice you would have given to the Mitzi of 8 years ago?
Oh boy. I'm trying to think back to where I was in my life back then, and I can barely remember. I think I was at the end of a relationship, 2 jobs ago. I think maybe the biggest thing I would have told myself back then is don't give up and don't forget about yourself. Because in the first couple of years, I actually did have a burnout. I was off work for 2.5 months, I think. And that's when the therapist that I was given, going on sick leave, she's the one who taught me that I can't take care of somebody if I'm not taking care of me. So I wish that I had known that at the beginning, that it was okay to take time to do something for myself. It wasn't selfish. It doesn't mean I care any less about my dad or about my sisters. It just means that I want to do the best I can. So I'm giving myself the best possibility of doing that by taking care of me. And now, I mean, again, not selfish, but it's, I take the time and I schedule my workouts. I've learned boundaries. I think that would be the second thing that I would have told myself back then. Find and create your boundaries and respect them. That's a big one. And I paid my psychologist good money to tell me that and teach me. So, I have to put that to good use. And it's helped a lot.
Sure. And then I'd love to ask you, I guess, what are some strategies that you use to kind of keep those boundaries legitimate and true and stick to them?
So personally, my calendar is my Bible. If it's not in my calendar, it's not going to happen. And why? Because I'm going to forget about it. So everything goes in my calendar. My workouts, I schedule them in advance, and I usually don't cancel. And that's, for me, a personal boundary for myself that I will not cross. But then you have, my dad will ask for this sun and the moon and the stars. But if I'm only capable of giving him the stars that day, I've also had to learn to accept that that's okay, and how to express it to him in a way that he'll understand and not be offended. So definitely boundaries with him, and honestly, boundaries with work. I do a lot less overtime now than I used to. I turn off my notifications at the end of the day. I don't keep my email or my chat apps for work on my phone after hours or on the weekends. And I think that that's something that is applicable not just as a caregiver, but just in general. Your work is your work, your life is your life. And if you don't respect those boundaries and find that balance between the two, you will burn out, whether it's caregiver burnout or regular life burnout. It's going to happen. And even if you don't think it will, it will. It can happen to anybody.
Such a beautiful point. And wow, that I just love your perspective. I think that a lot of people are really going to benefit from hearing this, because I think these are things that we all know, but they're things that are really difficult to accept, especially when the person that you're caring for is someone you have a great deal of love for and you want to give them the best. It's very easy to fall into that trap of trying to give them the sun, the moon, and the stars every day, even on days when you can only give them the stars. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us today. I know you're super, super busy, especially this week.
It's my pleasure, really. And I love what you guys are doing. And I hope that you have the utmost success, and that if I can help you in any way with that, that, you know, that I can.
Thank you. We honestly love hearing that. If anyone wants to kind of reach out to you and learn more about your journey, or even just chat with you because you have such great advice, where can they find you?
So on my Instagram, Caregivers Need Some Care Too. That's where I post everything caregiver related. And I think receiving a message about caregiving there would make more sense for my brain too. So that's a good spot. But if anyone's interested just in general, regular life, that Instagram is Mitz Fitness. So my name, but without the I at the end, and then fitness.
Awesome. So if anyone wants to reach out for fitness goals, caregiving, even just to share a laugh, then please reach out to Mitzi. She's an amazing resource with a lot of great advice. Thank you so much for chatting with us today, Mitzi.
Thank you for having me. This was really, really great.
So be sure to tune in next week for our next episode of Caregiver Spotlight.